They thought switching from pills to powder was just smart economics, not a death sentence. Hey guys, tonight we're talking about how the American healthcare system turned a graphic designer into a corpse. The beautiful irony is that Marcus Chen did everything right. He went to the doctor after his injury, took his medication as prescribed, and trusted the professional with the medical degree who assured him these pills were perfectly safe for short-term pain management. That doctor, by the way, got a nice bonus from the pharmaceutical company for prescribing over 200 OxyContin scripts that quarter. Marcus got a chemical dependency that would eat him alive from the inside out. One of them is still practicing medicine. The other one is dead. Guess which career path had better survival rates? Before we continue, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy these stories. Write in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. I always find it fascinating to see people from around the world united by one story. Marcus Chen broke his wrist on a Tuesday in September 2012. Nothing dramatic about it, just a skateboard trick gone wrong in a Portland parking garage. The board shot out from under him. His hand hit concrete at the wrong angle. The snap was audible to 3 people standing nearby. The emergency room doctor examined the x-rays and wrote a prescription without much conversation. 30 tablets of OxyContin, 40 milligrams each. Take 1 every 12 hours for pain. Follow up with orthopedics in 2 weeks. The whole appointment lasted 18 minutes, including wait time. Marcus filled the prescription that evening at a Walgreens near his apartment. The pharmacist stapled the receipt to the bag and reminded him not to drink alcohol while taking the medication. Nobody mentioned the medication might be slightly addictive. Nobody used the word opioid. The bottle's warning label said, "may cause drowsiness," like it was cough syrup. He took the first pill around 9 p.m. The pain in his wrist disappeared within 40 minutes. But something else happened that Marcus hadn't expected. The anxiety he carried daily about his freelance graphic design work evaporated. The background noise of self-doubt that had hummed in his head since college went silent. His shoulders relaxed for what felt like the first time in years. Marcus had been managing undiagnosed depression since he was 19. He'd learned to function through it the way people function through chronic back pain. You just get used to the weight. The OxyContin didn't just kill the physical pain. It killed everything he didn't know was hurting. He took the medication exactly as prescribed for the first week. 1 pill every 12 hours. His wrist healed on schedule. The orthopedist removed the cast after 6 weeks and declared the break successfully mended. Marcus left that appointment with a prescription refill. Another 30 pills, just to be safe while the bone finished strengthening. He didn't need them for his wrist anymore. The pain was gone. But the pills had revealed something more valuable than pain relief. They'd shown him what his brain felt like without the constant static of anxiety. Marcus started taking them not because his wrist hurt, but because his life hurt. 1 pill in the morning made his design work flow effortlessly. 1 in the evening made social interactions feel natural instead of exhausting. His girlfriend Sarah noticed he seemed happier lately, more present during conversations, less withdrawn. She attributed it to his wrist healing and his work going well. Marcus didn't correct her assumption. The pills were prescription medication from a real doctor. This wasn't drug abuse. This was treatment. The second prescription ran out in November. His wrist was completely healed. His doctor refused another refill. Marcus called 3 times. The receptionist's tone grew progressively colder. The doctor had already prescribed 60 pills for a simple fracture. That was more than sufficient. If Marcus was still experiencing pain, he should try ibuprofen. Marcus tried going without. The first day felt manageable, slightly uncomfortable, like wearing shoes half a size too small. The second day brought muscle aches and irritability. By the third day, he was sweating through his sheets at night and couldn't focus on design work for more than 10 minutes. His hands trembled too much to control the mouse properly. He snapped at Sarah over nothing. She asked if he was getting sick. He wasn't sick. He was withdrawing. But Marcus didn't know that term yet. His co-worker mentioned knowing someone who sold pills on the side. Just pharmaceutical stuff. Nothing sketchy. Marcus texted the number. A guy named Travis responded within 20 minutes. They met at a coffee shop on Hawthorne. Travis looked disappointingly normal. Just another Portland 20-something with a beard and an ironic t-shirt. The price made Marcus's stomach drop. $80 per pill. The same pill he'd been getting for less than $2 with insurance now cost more than a nice dinner. Travis explained this was the standard rate. High demand, limited supply, market forces, basic economics. Marcus bought 3 pills for $240. His checking account showed $847 after the transaction. Rent was $750 and due in 12 days. He told himself this was a one-time purchase, just enough to taper off gradually instead of going cold turkey. He'd be smart about this. The 3 pills lasted 4 days. He needed more. Travis sold him 5 pills for $400. Marcus's account dropped below $500. Rent was due in 8 days. The math became unavoidable. His habit was now costing roughly $80 per day. That's $2,400 per month. His freelance income averaged $3,200 on a good month. After rent, utilities, food, and pills, he'd be broke. Actually worse than broke. Deep in the red. Marcus met Travis again to buy more pills. His hand shook slightly as he pulled out his debit card. Travis noticed. He'd seen that shake before. It meant opportunity. Travis leaned back in his chair and asked a simple question. Did Marcus know why pharmaceutical companies charge so much? Because they had a monopoly on the source material, but there were alternatives. Same drug, different form, much cheaper. Marcus felt his throat tighten. He knew what Travis was suggesting before the words came. He'd grown up in San Francisco watching heroin hollow out the Tenderloin district. He'd sworn he'd never touch that shit. That was for homeless people, for junkies, for people who'd given up. Travis pulled out his phone and showed Marcus a photo. A small balloon of black tar heroin. $20. Enough to last most of the day for someone with Marcus's tolerance level. Do the math. 1 pill cost $80. 1 balloon cost $20. Same chemical, same effect, different delivery system. Marcus stared at that photo for a long time. His wrist didn't hurt anymore. His wrist had been fine for weeks, but his brain was screaming for these pills with a volume that drowned out every rational thought. He had $200 in his checking account. Rent was due in 5 days. His landlord had already texted twice about last month's payment being late. $20 versus $80. Survival versus principles. Need versus pride. Travis added one final detail. Heroin wasn't even that different from the pills. Both were opioids. Both hit the same receptors. Doctors used to prescribe heroin for pain before Oxy was invented. It was just medicine without the pharmaceutical markup. Think of it as generic brand. Marcus bought 1 balloon. Just this once. Just until his next paycheck cleared. Just to avoid the withdrawal that made his bones ache and his skin crawl. He'd never use a needle. He'd just snort it like people did with other drugs at parties. Keep it recreational. Keep it controlled. He didn't know he'd just made the last free decision of his life. Every choice from this moment forward would be made by the drug, not by him. His brain's reward system had been hijacked so completely that free will became a comforting illusion. He was already gone. He just didn't know it yet. Travis handed over the balloon with a smile that suggested he'd had this exact conversation hundreds of times before. Same questions, same justifications, same inevitable outcome. Marcus pocketed the heroin and walked home through the November rain. The balloon weighed less than a nickel. It would destroy everything he'd ever built. But that destruction wouldn't start immediately. First would come the honeymoon period. First would come the weeks where Marcus would convince himself he'd found the solution instead of the problem. First would come the brief, beautiful delusion that he was in control. That period of denial is always the kindest part. Marcus crushed the black tar on a magazine cover using his MetroCard. The substance looked nothing like the white powder from movies. It resembled burnt caramel or roofing tar, sticky and dark. He formed it into a thin line and snorted it through a cut straw. The rush hit differently than pills. Faster, warmer, more complete. Within 90 seconds, every muscle in his body relaxed simultaneously. His brain released enough dopamine to make the entire universe feel like it was giving him a hug. This was what people meant when they said drugs felt good. The pills had been a preview. This was the feature film. Marcus spent the next hour on his couch in a state of contentment so profound it bordered on religious experience. Nothing hurt. Nothing worried him. Life made sense in a way it never had before. He understood why people threw everything away for this feeling. He also understood he was smarter than those people. He'd never inject. That was the line. Snorting was safe, controlled, recreational. The high lasted 6 hours. He slept better that night than he had in months. No anxiety dreams. No waking up at 3 a.m. to check his phone. Just deep, peaceful darkness. He woke up feeling surprisingly normal. No hangover, no sickness. Just a pleasant memory of the previous evening and a desire to repeat it. Marcus used again that night after finishing a logo design for a microbrewery. The work had gone exceptionally well. His creative flow felt effortless. Ideas materialized fully formed instead of requiring the usual hours of frustrated iteration. By the end of the first week, Marcus had established a routine. 1 dose in the morning to start the day calm and focused. 1 in the evening to unwind. $20 in the morning. 20 at night. $40 daily. His freelance work was bringing in enough to cover it. The math worked. Everything was fine. His relationship with Sarah actually improved. Marcus had always been emotionally distant, locked in his own head, difficult to reach. The heroin dissolved those walls. He laughed more easily, touched her more often, made eye contact during conversations instead of staring at his phone. Sarah commented multiple times on how present he seemed lately. Whatever was different, she loved it. Marcus submitted 3 major projects ahead of deadline that month. His clients praised the work quality. One brewery owner said the logo was the best design his company had ever commissioned. Marcus took Sarah to a nice restaurant to celebrate. He excused himself twice during dinner to snort bumps in the bathroom. She never suspected anything beyond cocaine, and even that didn't seem worth mentioning. Half the designers in Portland use coke socially. The heroin made Marcus better at his job. That's the part that made it so dangerous. He wasn't neglecting responsibilities or failing obligations. He was excelling. His portfolio was growing stronger. His income was increasing. The drug appeared to be enhancing his life rather than destroying it. This is how addiction camouflages itself in the beginning. It works. That's the trap. Week 6 arrived with a subtle shift. The morning dose that used to last until early afternoon now wore off by 11 a.m. Marcus needed a midday bump to maintain the feeling. His daily cost jumped from $40 to $60. Still manageable, still within budget. Just a tolerance thing. Bodies adapt, no big deal. By week 8, $60 wasn't enough. The evening dose needed to be larger to achieve the same warmth. Marcus was now spending $80 daily. His bank account balance stopped growing and started hovering. Income and expenses had reached equilibrium at an unsustainable level. One bad month would sink him. Week 10 brought the realization that changed everything. Marcus snorted his morning dose and felt normal, not high, not euphoric, just baseline functional. The heroin was no longer providing pleasure. It was preventing pain. He wasn't chasing the dragon anymore. He was running from the withdrawal. This distinction matters more than anything else in addiction. Getting high is optional. Avoiding withdrawal becomes mandatory. The drug stops being a choice and starts being a requirement, like food or water. Marcus's brain chemistry had reorganized itself around the presence of heroin. Sobriety now felt like sickness. He tried skipping a dose to test his dependency. Bad idea. Within 4 hours, his nose ran constantly. His eyes watered. Yawning became uncontrollable. Every joint in his body ached. These were just the early symptoms. Marcus snorted another bump immediately. The symptoms vanished. That's how you know you're physically dependent. The drug has stopped being medicine and become maintenance. His daily cost hit $100 by week 12. Travis raised prices because demand exceeded supply. Basic economics. Marcus was buying twice daily now, sometimes 3 times if the batch was weak. His savings account, which had contained nearly $4,000 when he broke his wrist, now showed $340. 3 months of heroin use had consumed 90% of his financial cushion. The first missed deadline happened in early February. A local coffee company needed menu designs by Friday. Marcus got stuck in a withdrawal cycle and couldn't focus. He delivered the work 3 days late with obvious mistakes. The client paid but didn't hire him again. Word travels fast in Portland's tight creative community. Sarah started asking questions. Marcus was distant again, but differently than before. He seemed preoccupied, anxious. He made constant excuses to step out of rooms. His phone was always buzzing. He became defensive when she asked if everything was okay. The present, engaged version of Marcus from 2 months ago had evaporated. This new Marcus was secretive and irritable. She found a cut straw in his jacket pocket while looking for her car keys. He explained it away as cocaine, just occasionally, just to meet deadlines. Sarah didn't love the answer but accepted it. Lots of creative professionals use stimulants. At least it wasn't meth or heroin. At least he wasn't injecting anything. Marcus let her believe the lie because the truth was unthinkable. He'd been using heroin daily for nearly 3 months. He couldn't stop without experiencing withdrawal that felt like severe flu combined with broken bones. His tolerance had built so high that the dose which originally got him high now barely kept him comfortable. He was spending over $3,000 monthly on a drug that no longer provided pleasure, just absence of pain. The honeymoon period was over. That magical window where the drug seemed like a solution had slammed shut. Now came the reality. Now came the endless chase of trying to feel normal while sliding deeper into debt. Now came the slow recognition that he wasn't using heroin anymore. The heroin was using him. His brain had been hijacked so completely that every decision filtered through one question: how do I get more? Marcus bought a balloon from Travis on a Thursday afternoon. His checking account balance was $89. Rent was due the following Tuesday. He'd need to land a major client project immediately or he'd be evicted. The balloon cost $20. He had $69 left. That wouldn't even cover one more day of using. The math had become impossible. Income could not keep pace with tolerance. Something had to give. Travis watched Marcus count crumpled bills and offered a suggestion. There was a more efficient method of using: snorting wasted product. Half the heroin got stuck in nasal passages or dripped down the throat without absorbing properly. Smoking was better but still inefficient. The most economical delivery system was injection. You used less product, got higher, saved money. Marcus shook his head immediately. That was the line. He'd never cross it. Needles were for real junkies. He was just someone who'd gotten a bit dependent on pain medication. Totally different situation. He'd figure out the money problem and taper down gradually. Get back to occasional use. Regain control. Travis didn't argue. He'd heard this exact speech before. They always said never. They always meant until. The financial pressure would build. The withdrawal would intensify. The line would move. It always did. Travis told Marcus to call when he changed his mind. Not if. When. Marcus walked home with one balloon that would last approximately 8 hours. He had no plan for what happened after those 8 hours ended. His phone showed 17 unread messages, client deadlines, Sarah asking where he was, his mother calling about his birthday next week. Every obligation felt impossible. The only thing that mattered was the drug. The only thing that made sense was using. Everything else had become background noise. He snorted half the balloon in his bathroom. Sarah was at work. The apartment felt too quiet. Marcus caught his reflection in the mirror. He'd lost weight. His cheekbones were sharper. His eyes looked hollow. 3 months ago, he'd been a successful graphic designer with a girlfriend and a savings account. Now he was a guy who needed heroin to function. The transformation had happened so gradually he'd barely noticed. But seeing his reflection made it undeniable. He looked like someone who used drugs. He looked sick. The high barely registered anymore. Just a slight warmth, a reduction of the constant anxiety. This was maintenance, not recreation. He was spending $100 daily to feel what normal people felt for free. The economics were absurd. The situation was unsustainable. But stopping seemed impossible because withdrawal was worse than anything he'd ever experienced. Marcus had $90 to last 4 days until rent was due. The heroin would be gone by tomorrow morning. The withdrawal would start by tomorrow afternoon. He needed to find money or find a solution. The problem was that heroin had made him terrible at both. All his problem-solving capacity was devoted to getting more heroin. Everything else was negotiable. Everything else could wait. The drug had reorganized his priorities so completely that his own survival ranked below his next dose. Marcus pawned his laptop on a Friday afternoon. The MacBook Pro he'd bought 18 months ago for design work sold for $380 at a shop on Powell Boulevard. The pawnbroker knew exactly what Marcus needed the cash for. The trembling hands gave it away. Everyone who came in shaking left with significantly less than their items were worth. That $380 lasted 4 days. Marcus was now spending roughly $120 daily just to avoid withdrawal. The high had become irrelevant. He was medicating against sickness, nothing more. His phone held 6 missed calls from the landlord. Eviction proceedings had started. Marcus needed $1,500 by March 1st or he'd be on the street. He picked up a design contract for a tech startup, promised delivery in 5 days. The advance payment was $1,000. Marcus spent $700 on heroin within 48 hours. His brain no longer calculated rationally. Getting well today mattered more than rent tomorrow. The future had compressed to an 8-hour window. Nothing beyond the next dose registered as real. Travis counted Marcus's money at their usual coffee shop and delivered the uncomfortable truth. At this rate, Marcus would run out by Monday. The math didn't work anymore. Snorting was too inefficient for someone with this level of tolerance. Half the product was wasted. The solution was obvious. The solution was a needle. Marcus refused again. That boundary remained firm. He'd gotten dependent on a substance, sure, but he maintained standards. Injection meant something different. It meant crossing into a category of user he'd never allow himself to become. Travis pulled out his phone and opened the calculator app. He showed Marcus the breakdown with the detachment of an accountant explaining tax returns. Snorting required 0.3 grams to achieve baseline comfort. That's $60 at current prices. Injecting needed 0.1 grams for the same effect. $20. Same 8-hour window. 1/3 the cost. This wasn't about getting higher. This was about surviving on a budget. The financial logic was irrefutable. Marcus was spending $360 every 3 days. Injectable use would drop that to $120. The difference was $240 every 72 hours, nearly $2,000 monthly. He could make rent, keep his apartment, maintain some appearance of functionality. His hands were shaking badly now. Withdrawal was starting its familiar creep. The bone-deep ache, the crawling skin sensation, the yawning that wouldn't stop. Marcus had maybe 3 hours before the symptoms became unbearable. He had $40 in his pocket, enough for 2 balloons that would barely touch his tolerance, or enough for 1 injection that would actually work. Travis waited without pressure. He'd made the pitch. The decision belonged to Marcus. Every addict reached this crossroads eventually. Some resisted for months. Others caved within weeks. But they all arrived at the same conclusion because mathematics doesn't negotiate. When your habit costs more than your income, efficiency becomes survival. Marcus said yes, just this once, just to see, just because the money situation was temporarily difficult. Travis offered to help with the first injection. Doing it wrong could cause abscesses or collapse veins. Better to learn from someone experienced. They went to Travis's apartment in southeast Portland. The place smelled like cigarettes and dirty laundry. Travis retrieved his kit from the bathroom. Spoons, syringes, cotton balls, lighter. The tools of the trade laid out with the casual familiarity of a mechanic's workbench. Marcus watched Travis prepare the shot. The black tar went into the spoon. A few drops of water dissolved it into brown liquid. The flame from a lighter cooked the mixture. Travis drew the solution through cotton into a syringe, filtering out impurities. The entire process took 90 seconds. Travis wrapped a belt around Marcus's upper arm and told him to make a fist. Veins rose along his forearm, thick and blue and perfect for injection. Travis found one easily. He'd done this demonstration dozens of times. The needle went in at a shallow angle. A pull on the plunger showed blood mixing with heroin, registering, confirming proper vein access. Travis pushed the plunger. The heroin entered Marcus's bloodstream. 10 seconds passed. Then Marcus understood why people destroyed their entire lives for this experience. The rush hit like a tidal wave of pure pleasure. Every nerve ending in his body experienced simultaneous orgasm. His brain released dopamine in quantities that natural experiences could never produce. This wasn't getting high. This was chemical proof that God existed and lived inside a syringe. The feeling was so intensely pleasurable it erased every other memory. Everything he'd ever enjoyed, sex, food, accomplishment, love, became irrelevant. This was the only thing that mattered. This was what he'd been searching for his entire life without knowing. The rush faded after 30 seconds, but the high remained. Warm, perfect, complete. Marcus couldn't move, couldn't speak, could barely think. His body had achieved a state of satisfaction so profound that existence itself felt like a gift. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had stopped functioning normally. He left Travis's apartment in darkness. The injection had lasted 4 hours of pure bliss, followed by 2 hours of pleasant warmth. 6 hours total for $20. The economics made sense. The efficiency was undeniable. Marcus told himself this was temporary. Once his finances stabilized, he'd go back to snorting, maybe even quit entirely. This was just a practical adjustment. He bought his own syringes the next day from a needle exchange on Sandy Boulevard. They gave them out for free. Public health policy aimed at preventing disease transmission. Marcus took 20, just to have supplies, just to be prepared. His first self-injection happened in his bathroom. Sarah was at her sister's place for the weekend. Marcus locked the door anyway. The process was trickier alone. Finding a vein, registering, pushing the plunger without shaking. But he managed it. The rush arrived on schedule. God said hello again. Within 1 week, Marcus was injecting 4 times daily. Morning, lunch, evening, before bed. Each shot required 0.1 grams. His daily cost dropped from $120 to $80. The financial math had actually improved. He felt brilliant for discovering the solution. The irony was that he'd traded efficiency for accelerated destruction. Injectable heroin shortened the timeline from functional user to complete catastrophe. But Marcus couldn't see that yet. His veins started showing damage by week 2. The injection sites bruised easily. Some shots missed the vein entirely, causing painful lumps under his skin. Track marks appeared along his forearms, dark pinpricks in linear patterns, the unmistakable signature of intravenous drug use. Marcus started wearing long sleeves constantly, even indoors, even in March when Portland temperatures climbed into the 60s. Sarah noticed but assumed he was cold sensitive. She'd noticed a lot of odd behaviours recently, but couldn't assemble them into a coherent explanation. Marcus was losing weight. He'd become secretive about his phone. He disappeared into the bathroom for 20-minute intervals. He nodded off during movies. His mood swung between energetic and lethargic with no middle ground. She found his spoons on a Tuesday morning. Marcus had left them in his jacket pocket after preparing a shot at Travis's place. Sarah was looking for her car keys. Her hand touched something metal. She pulled out 2 blackened spoons. The bottoms were scorched. Residue stained the concave surfaces. Sarah knew what this meant. She'd watched enough crime shows. This wasn't cocaine. This was heroin. Her boyfriend was shooting heroin in their shared apartment. The man she dated for 2 years was a junkie. She confronted him when he returned from meeting Travis. Marcus denied everything. The spoons were from a client's kitchen he'd borrowed for coffee. Weak explanation. Sarah demanded to see his arms. Marcus refused. The refusal confirmed everything. She packed a bag within 30 minutes, took her essential belongings and left. Told Marcus to get help or don't contact her. She loved him, but couldn't watch him die. The door closed. Marcus stood alone in the apartment they'd shared. His phone buzzed. Travis texting about a new shipment. Marcus didn't chase after Sarah, didn't call, didn't apologize. The heroin mattered more than the relationship. His brain had been rewired so completely that losing his girlfriend registered as inconvenient rather than devastating. He could be sad about it later. Right now he needed to get well. The withdrawal was starting. He injected in the empty apartment. The rush came. The sadness vanished. The heroin was a better relationship anyway. It never asked questions, never judged, never left. As long as he had money, the drug would love him unconditionally. That's the bargain addiction offers. Perfect reliability in exchange for everything else. His tolerance continued climbing. By late March, Marcus needed 0.2 grams per injection. His daily cost was back up to $160. The efficiency gains had evaporated. His veins were collapsing from repeated trauma. The arms that used to provide easy access now required 10 minutes of searching for a viable injection site. Marcus started hitting his hands. The veins there were smaller but still functional. Then his feet. then his neck. Each new location represented another boundary crossed. Injecting into the neck meant you'd run out of everywhere else. It meant you were close to the end of options. His landlord posted an eviction notice on March 28th. Marcus hadn't paid rent in 2 months. He owed $3,000. The court date was set for mid-April. Marcus knew he wouldn't fight it. He had no defense. The money was gone. All of it had been converted to heroin and injected into increasingly damaged veins. He sold his furniture to a second-hand shop, his bed, his desk, his couch, everything Sarah hadn't taken. The total came to $640. That bought 8 days of using. On day 9, Marcus had nothing left to sell except his laptop, which was already pawned. His phone held no messages from potential clients. His portfolio website hadn't been updated in 6 weeks. His professional reputation was destroyed. Nobody hired designers who missed every deadline. Travis offered him a job. Not really a job, more like a contract position. Run drugs to other users. 5 deliveries paid for Marcus's daily supply. Simple logistics. Travis needed runners. Marcus needed income. The arrangement made sense. Marcus became a delivery driver for heroin. He rode Portland's bus system carrying balloons in his sock, meeting strangers at coffee shops, handing over product, collecting cash, returning to Travis with the money. Each successful run earned him a balloon for personal use. He was working directly for the drug now, employed by his own addiction, the servant and the master sharing the same body. His parents called in early April, birthday check-in. Marcus's mother asked how he was doing. Fine, he lied. Work is busy. Sarah and I are good. Everything's great. His voice sounded thin even to himself. His mother sensed something wrong but couldn't identify what. She asked if he needed money. Marcus said no too quickly. The desperation was audible. She offered to send $500 anyway. Marcus gave her Travis's address because he'd been evicted 3 days earlier. He was sleeping on Travis's couch now, paying rent by running deliveries. His entire life had compressed into a 72-hour cycle of using, withdrawing and hustling for the next fix. Every possession he'd owned was gone. His girlfriend had left. His career was finished. His family believed comfortable lies. The only relationship that remained was with the heroin, and that relationship demanded everything. Marcus had been using for 6 months. He was 24 years old. He looked 40. His weight had dropped from 170 to 140. His skin was grey. His teeth were yellowing from neglect and vomiting. His arms looked like someone had used them for target practice. Track marks ran from his wrists to his shoulders in dark constellations. He'd become the thing he swore he'd never be. The junkie shooting up in a dealer's apartment, the cautionary tale, the person other people crossed the street to avoid. The needle had seemed like a practical solution to a financial problem, but it had actually been a trapdoor. Once he fell through, climbing back out became exponentially harder. Injectable use accelerated everything. The tolerance, the damage, the desperation. Marcus had wanted to save money. Instead, he'd sold his entire future for a feeling that lasted 4 hours, and he'd do it again tomorrow, and the day after, and every day until the heroin killed him, or he found a way to stop. Currently, death seemed more likely. Travis got arrested on a Thursday in late April. Undercover police had been watching the apartment for 3 weeks. Marcus was inside when they kicked the door in, 4 officers in tactical gear shouting commands. Marcus was holding 2 balloons meant for delivery. They cuffed him on the couch where he'd been sleeping. The charges were possession with intent to distribute. Felony level. Marcus spent 18 hours in county jail before his mother posted bail. She flew up from San Francisco. The disappointment in her face was worse than the handcuffs had been. She paid $2,500 to a bail bondsman. Marcus was released with a court date in June and strict orders to stay clean. He lasted 11 hours. The withdrawal started during the drive back to her hotel. Sweating, shaking, yawning so hard his jaw cramped. His mother thought he had the flu. Marcus excused himself to the bathroom and vomited nothing. His mother knocked on the door asking if he needed a doctor. He said no. What he needed was heroin. What he needed was impossible to explain to a woman who'd never understood why anyone would touch drugs in the first place. She bought him dinner at a restaurant downtown. Marcus couldn't eat. Food tasted like cardboard. His stomach rejected everything except opioids. He pushed pasta around his plate while his mother talked about rehab options. 30-day programs, 60-day programs, facilities in California with ocean views and therapy horses. She'd researched extensively. She had pamphlets. She had hope. Marcus nodded along, agreed to everything, said yes to treatment. His mother paid for a plane ticket back to San Francisco. The flight left Sunday morning, 2 days away. Marcus just needed to stay clean for 48 hours. Then professional help would take over. Then recovery could begin. He lasted until she fell asleep. Her hotel room had a couch. Marcus waited until her breathing steadied. Then he took $80 from her purse, left the hotel at 2 a.m., found a dealer on Burnside within 20 minutes. Street-level dealers operate 24 hours. Addiction doesn't sleep. Neither does the supply chain. The heroin was weaker than Travis's product. Marcus had to inject twice to feel normal. The $80 bought temporary relief and permanent shame. He returned to the hotel before sunrise. His mother never knew he'd left. She woke him at 7 with coffee and optimism. The flight was in 3 hours. A new beginning awaited. Marcus missed the flight deliberately. Told his mother he needed to grab something from Travis's apartment. She offered to come along. He insisted she wait at the hotel, promised he'd be back within an hour. She watched him leave, probably knowing she'd never see him again. Not this version of him anyway. Maybe not any version. Marcus went to Travis's place, which was now crawling with police tape. He knew where Travis kept the emergency stash. Behind the water heater in the basement. 3 balloons wrapped in cellophane. Marcus took them. His mother called 4 times. He didn't answer. She texted asking where he was. He responded with lies. Flight got delayed. Still at the apartment. Phone dying. Be there soon. He never went back. His mother waited 6 hours at the hotel before accepting reality. She flew home alone. Marcus had chosen the drug over salvation. She'd given him a lifeline and he'd used it to buy more rope to hang himself with. The bail money was gone. The plane ticket was wasted. Her son was lost somewhere in Portland shooting poison into his veins. Marcus moved into a tent under the Burnside Bridge. A small encampment of 8 people, all users, all existing in the same desperate cycle. The tent cost him $20. Someone named Danny sold it. The previous owner had overdosed 2 weeks prior. His belongings came with the purchase. A sleeping bag that smelled like mildew, a backpack with a broken zipper, a spoon already blackened from use, life compressed into a brutal simplicity. Wake up sick, find money, buy heroin, get well, sleep, repeat. No job, no prospects, no plan beyond the next 8 hours. Marcus's veins were completely destroyed. His arms looked like someone had attacked them with an ice pick. Dark scabs covered injection sites that never healed properly. He'd been reusing the same needle for a week. Fresh syringes cost money better spent on dope. He started hitting his legs. The femoral vein in his groin still worked. Injecting there was dangerous. Miss the vein, and the heroin went into muscle tissue, caused abscesses, infections, potential amputation. But Marcus had run out of safer options. His hands were unusable, his feet were swollen, his neck veins had collapsed. The groin was all that remained. Money became an obsession that consumed every waking thought. Marcus needed minimum $50 daily just to avoid withdrawal. Getting high was a luxury from a previous life. Now he was just preventing sickness. Every morning started with the same calculation: how to acquire $50 before the shaking started, before the vomiting began, before his bones felt like they were breaking from the inside. He stole copper wire from construction sites, rolled it up in his backpack, sold it to scrapyards for cash. One good site could yield $30. He needed 2 sites daily. The work was risky. Security guards, police, construction workers who'd chase him down. Marcus ran from 3 different sites over 2 weeks. His lungs burned, his legs cramped. But he ran because getting caught meant jail. Jail meant withdrawal without heroin. That was worse than any beating. Shoplifting became routine. Small electronics from Target, baby formula from grocery stores, razors from Walgreens, items easy to conceal and simple to fence. Marcus learned which stores had the worst security, which exits led to alleys, which times of day had minimal staff coverage. He became efficient at theft the same way he'd once been efficient at graphic design. Desperation breeds expertise. His little sister Emma called in mid-May. She'd heard about the arrest from their mother, wanted to help, offered to send money for food. Marcus's hands shook as he answered. He needed $200 for rent. A lie. He lived in a tent. Emma was 19 and working her first real job. She sent the money through Western Union, believed his promises about getting clean, about finding work, about turning things around. Marcus spent all $200 on heroin within 36 hours, bought enough to stay well for 3 days. The guilt lasted maybe 4 minutes. Then the drug hit his bloodstream and everything else became irrelevant. Guilt was a luxury for people who weren't dope sick. Marcus existed beyond such concerns. He'd become something simpler than human, a biological machine that converted resources into heroin, and heroin into temporary functionality. Emma called a week later asking how he was doing. Marcus didn't answer. She called again. He declined. She texted asking if he'd received the money. He replied that everything was fine. Don't worry, she knew. Everyone always knows. She blocked his number the next day. Her brother was gone. The person texting her was just a ghost wearing his phone. Marcus hadn't eaten a real meal in 3 weeks. Food nauseated him. His stomach had forgotten how to process anything except heroin. He weighed 128 pounds. His ribs showed through his t-shirt. His face looked skeletal. Strangers gave him money sometimes, mistaking him for homeless. He was homeless, but he didn't spend their charity on food. Every dollar had a predetermined destination. Every cent was already converted to fractions of a balloon. The abscess started on his right arm in late May, a small bump near the elbow where he'd missed a vein 3 days earlier. The heroin had gone into muscle tissue instead of bloodstream. His body was trying to fight the infection, but his immune system was compromised from months of malnutrition and drug abuse. The bump grew, got hot, turned red, started throbbing with a pain that competed with withdrawal. Marcus couldn't afford to care. He had $9 and needed $50 for his next shot. The abscess would have to wait. Everything had to wait except the heroin. Priority number 1 was getting well. Health concerns ranked somewhere below finding clean socks. His brain had reorganized importance into a hierarchy where survival played second fiddle to maintenance of addiction. He stole a laptop from a car on Hawthorne, smashed the window, grabbed the bag, ran 4 blocks before his lungs gave out. The laptop was a MacBook. worth maybe $400 to the right buyer. Marcus took it to a pawn shop and got $75. The pawnbroker saw the abscess, saw the track marks, saw everything Marcus was, offered bottom dollar because desperation has no bargaining power. That 75 lasted a day and a half. Marcus was injecting 5 times now. His tolerance had climbed so high that 0.2 grams barely touched him. He needed 0.3 to feel normal. That's $60 per shot, $300 daily. His income from theft and panhandling averaged maybe $80. The math was impossible. He was falling behind exponentially, debt to his own body accumulating faster than any payment plan could manage. Danny from the tent offered to teach him how to boost, professional shoplifting. They could work together, split the proceeds, hit multiple stores in one day, make real money. Marcus agreed because refusing meant withdrawing. They stole printer cartridges from office supply stores, sold them to a guy Danny knew for 50 cents on the dollar, made $160 on a good day. The abscess on Marcus's arm had grown to golf ball size. The skin around it turned purple. The smell was unmistakable, sweet and rotten. Dead tissue decomposing while still attached to his body. Danny told him to see a doctor. Marcus said he would. Tomorrow, after he got well, after he found money, after everything else that mattered more than a potentially fatal infection. His parents stopped taking his calls completely. The number went straight to voicemail. His father had blocked him. His mother had blocked him. His sister had blocked him. Every family connection severed. They'd held a meeting, apparently. Decided together that enabling him was worse than abandoning him. Tough love. Let him hit bottom. Maybe then he'd get serious about recovery. They didn't understand that bottom kept getting deeper. That rock bottom was a myth addicts told themselves while falling through layers of hell. Marcus stared at his phone one evening. No messages. No missed calls. Nobody in the world gave a shit if he lived or died. His contact list was full of names that no longer responded. He'd burned every bridge, stolen from everyone who'd helped, lied to anyone who'd believed. He'd become radioactive, toxic, unfixable. The only constant was the heroin. The only relationship that hadn't ended was with the drug. It never judged him, never abandoned him. As long as he found money, the heroin would be there, reliable, consistent, more loyal than family, more dependable than friends. The drug loved him in ways humans couldn't. It would stay with him until the very end, and the end was approaching faster than Marcus wanted to acknowledge. He looked at his arms in the tent one night. They barely resembled arms anymore, more like crime scenes, every inch damaged, scabbed, infected. The abscess had spread. Red lines were creeping up toward his shoulder, blood poisoning, sepsis, medical emergency. Marcus knew all this. He'd Googled the symptoms weeks ago, but knowing didn't change the hierarchy. The heroin came first, always first. Everything else was negotiable, including his life. He prepared another shot using a lighter that barely worked. His hands shook too badly to hold it steady. Took 3 tries to cook the heroin. He found a vein in his groin, pushed the plunger. The rush was weaker than yesterday. Tomorrow it would be weaker still. His tolerance was a monster that consumed everything and demanded more. There was no satisfying it, no achieving equilibrium, just an endless, accelerating slide toward complete annihilation. Marcus was 24 years old. He lived in a tent. He weighed less than he had at age 14. His body was failing in multiple ways simultaneously. His family had disowned him. His future was measured in hours rather than years. And despite knowing all of this, despite understanding exactly where this ended, he prepared another shot because withdrawal was starting, because the heroin was all he had left. because stopping now seemed more impossible than dying later. The drug had won so completely that Marcus couldn't even remember what losing felt like anymore. Marcus woke up on June 3rd unable to bend his right arm. The abscess had tripled in size overnight. What had been golf ball sized was now closer to a tennis ball. The skin stretched tight and shiny over the infection. Heat radiated from it like a small furnace embedded in his elbow. His temperature was spiking. Fever dreams had plagued what little sleep he'd managed. Marcus couldn't tell if he was withdrawing or dying from blood poisoning. Probably both. His body was staging multiple crises simultaneously, each one demanding attention he couldn't provide. The abscess needed drainage, antibiotics, surgery, professional medical intervention. Marcus had $12 and no insurance. The emergency room would treat him, but then saddle him with a bill for thousands. Medical debt meant nothing to someone with no assets. But the hours spent in the ER meant hours without heroin. That math he understood perfectly. He bought heroin instead. 2 balloons for $24. Danny fronted him the extra $12 on credit. Marcus injected into his left arm because his right was unusable. The high barely registered. His body was too busy fighting sepsis to process euphoria properly. But withdrawal stopped. That was enough. Days blurred together. Marcus couldn't remember what day it was or how long he'd been sick. The abscess continued expanding. His arm swelled to twice its normal diameter. The skin color transitioned from red to purple to a mottled black around the edges. Dead tissue. Necrosis spreading outward from the infection site like a map of his body's surrender. The smell arrived on day 4, sweet and rotten simultaneously, like fruit left in summer heat to decompose. The odor was bad enough that Marcus noticed it himself. That meant everyone else could smell him from 10 feet away. Danny moved his tent to the opposite side of the encampment, said the stench was making him nauseous. Other users avoided Marcus completely. Junkies have standards, turns out. There's a limit to what shared misery will tolerate. Marcus tried washing the arm in the Willamette River. Cold water and desperate scrubbing. The smell didn't diminish. It was coming from inside, from tissue rotting while still attached to his body. His immune system had given up. The infection was winning comprehensively. Red streaks appeared on his bicep, lines radiating up from the abscess toward his shoulder. Blood poisoning. The bacteria had entered his circulatory system. Sepsis would follow, then organ failure, then death. Marcus understood the progression intellectually but couldn't make himself care appropriately. The withdrawal remained scarier than dying. He stopped eating completely. Food triggered vomiting within minutes. His stomach had forgotten its original purpose. Only heroin went down and stayed down. His weight dropped below 120. His pants required a belt cinched to the last hole. His face looked like a skull with skin stretched over it. Strangers crossed the street when they saw him coming. The fever climbed higher. Marcus spent whole days unconscious in his tent, waking only to inject, then passing out again. He lost control of his bladder twice, woke up in soaked clothes, didn't have the energy to change, just lay in his own waste until the next withdrawal cycle forced him upright. Danny checked on him on day 7. Marcus was incoherent, mumbling about graphic design deadlines, about his mother, about Sarah. His brain was cooking from fever. The infection had spread throughout his body. His arm was grotesquely swollen. The abscess was now the size of a grapefruit. The skin had turned completely black in places. That night the abscess ruptured. Marcus was preparing a shot when he felt something give way. Pressure released, then liquid. Pus and blood and something darker poured from the wound. The smell intensified exponentially, like someone had opened a grave. the tent filled with the stench of decay. Marcus tried to stop the leaking with a t-shirt. The fabric soaked through immediately. The pain was extraordinary, not like normal pain. This was pain that bypassed conscious processing and went straight to the primal brain. Marcus screamed, couldn't help it. The sound that came out didn't belong to a human. It was animal, raw, the sound of a body failing catastrophically. He passed out from the combination of agony and fever, just collapsed in his tent. The infection was leaking freely now, creating a pool of biological waste underneath him. His body was literally emptying itself of dead tissue. Danny heard the screaming and found Marcus unconscious. Checked for a pulse. Found one, but it was weak, thready, inconsistent. Marcus's skin was grey. His breathing was shallow. His lips had a blue tint. This wasn't withdrawal. This was dying. Actual medical crisis. Danny didn't want a corpse in their camp. Police attention, investigations, questions about who supplied the drugs. He called 911 from a borrowed phone, told them someone was unresponsive, gave the location under the bridge, hung up before they could ask more. Emergency services already knew about the tent city. They responded to overdoses there weekly. Paramedics arrived within 8 minutes. They found Marcus in a pool of discharge. The smell hit them immediately. One EMT gagged. They'd seen abscesses before, but rarely this advanced. The wound had been festering for at least a week, maybe longer. The arm was massively infected, potentially unsalvageable. They started an IV, pushed fluids, administered oxygen, loaded Marcus onto a gurney and transported to OHSU hospital. Danny watched from a distance, didn't want to be associated with the patient, couldn't afford police questions about their living situation or drug connections. He returned to his tent once the ambulance left. Marcus regained consciousness in the emergency room. Fluorescent lights, beeping machines, nurses in scrubs. Reality assembled itself slowly. He was in the hospital. His arm was being examined by people wearing masks. The withdrawal was beginning. That familiar dread creeping in. How long had he been here? 4 hours? 5? The ER physician explained the situation. Massive abscess, extensive necrosis, blood infection, sepsis. They needed to perform emergency surgery, debride the wound, remove dead tissue, start aggressive antibiotic therapy. The alternative was amputation or death. Those were the options. Lose the tissue or lose the arm or lose everything. Marcus signed consent forms with his left hand. His right was immobilized. They wheeled him to surgery. He counted backward from 10 as anesthesia took over. Fell into darkness cleaner than any he'd experienced from heroin. The surgery lasted 3 hours. They cut away dead muscle and tissue, drained liters of pus, cleaned the infection cavity, left the wound open for continued drainage. The surgeon told the recovery nurse that another 12 hours would have meant amputation. 24 hours would have meant death. Marcus had arrived at the exact threshold of salvageable. He woke up in a recovery room. His arm was wrapped in extensive bandaging. An IV dripped antibiotics into his left hand. Pain medication flowed through the same line. Not opioids. They'd noted his track marks. His history was obvious. They gave him non-narcotic pain relief. It barely touched the surgical pain. Didn't touch the withdrawal at all. Hour 6 post-surgery brought the sweating. Hour 8 brought the cramping. Hour 10 brought the vomiting. Marcus was withdrawing in a hospital bed. Nurses checked on him periodically, documented his symptoms, offered Tylenol. They couldn't give him opioids for withdrawal management. Policy prohibited maintenance for addiction. He'd have to suffer through it. By hour 18, Marcus was experiencing full acute withdrawal. Muscles cramping, bones aching, skin crawling, restless legs making it impossible to lie still, nausea that wouldn't quit, diarrhea that left him weak, emotional agony worse than the physical symptoms. His brain screaming for the chemical it needed to function. A social worker visited, talked about rehabilitation programs, detox facilities, medication-assisted treatment. Marcus nodded through everything, said yes to all suggestions. His only thought was escape, getting out, finding heroin. The fix would solve every problem in this room. The surgeon came by for rounds, examined the wound, said it was healing adequately. They wanted to keep Marcus for another week minimum. Daily wound care, IV antibiotics, physical therapy. He'd require months of treatment, potential skin grafts. The arm would never fully recover, but he'd keep it. That was the victory. Marcus signed himself out AMA, against medical advice, 22 hours after surgery. The paperwork took 15 minutes. They couldn't legally hold him. The doctor explained he could die from untreated sepsis. The infection could return. The wound could worsen. Marcus signed anyway, his hand shaking so badly the signature was illegible. They gave him a prescription for oral antibiotics, 7 days' worth, instructions for wound care, phone numbers for addiction resources. Marcus took everything and left, still wearing hospital scrubs because his clothes had been destroyed, the bandage on his arm already showing seepage, blood and pus leaking through. He walked 4 blocks to a corner where dealers congregated. His arm throbbed with every heartbeat. The wound was screaming for medical attention. Marcus needed heroin more. The hierarchy remained unchanged. Get well first. Deal with consequences never. A dealer named Rico recognized him from before, looked at the hospital bracelet, looked at the bandages, knew exactly what Marcus needed. 2 balloons for 25. Marcus had no money, promised to pay tomorrow. Rico fronted him on reputation. Everyone knew Marcus always came back, always found money, always paid debts. Addiction was the most reliable credit score in existence. Marcus found an alley, prepared the shot. His hands trembled from withdrawal and post-surgical weakness. Took 4 tries to cook it properly. He injected into his left arm. The right was too damaged, too painful, too wrapped in medical gauze. The heroin hit his system. Withdrawal stopped immediately. The pain reduced to manageable levels. Everything that had been screaming went quiet. Marcus leaned against brick wall and exhaled. This was relief. This was medicine. The hospital had cut away his flesh. The heroin made him whole. His arm continued oozing through the bandages. He'd need to change the dressing. Eventually, after he slept, after he found money for tomorrow's shots, the wound could wait. Everything could wait. The priority was maintaining, staying well, surviving 1 8-hour window at a time. The surgeons had saved his arm. Marcus was already planning how to destroy the rest of himself. The abscess was just the opening act. The real catastrophe was still building momentum, still accelerating toward an inevitable conclusion that everyone could see, except the person living it. Marcus returned to the tent camp in July 2015. His arm had mostly healed into an angry scar. The antibiotics had worked despite him taking only 3 of the prescribed 7 days. His body had fought the infection on sheer survival instinct, while his brain worked against every recovery effort. The heroin supply changed that month. Dealers started cutting black tar with fentanyl without announcing the modification. Chinese laboratories were producing synthetic opioids 50 times stronger than heroin and 100 times cheaper. The economics were irresistible. A kilogram of fentanyl could be ordered online for $2,000. That same amount stretched 10 kilos of heroin into 100 kilos of product. The profit margin was obscene. Marcus didn't know about the new ingredient when he bought from a dealer he'd never used before. Travis was still in jail. His regular connections had dried up. This new guy named Miguel operated near Pioneer Square, sold balloons for 15 instead of 20, discount pricing. Marcus bought 4 because the price was right. He prepared the first shot in an alley behind a Chinese restaurant. Same ritual. Spoon, lighter, cotton, syringe. Drew up the brown liquid, found a vein in his left hand, registered, pushed the plunger, expected the familiar warmth. What happened next was nothing like familiar. The rush hit with sledgehammer force. Marcus's eyes rolled back. His body went rigid. His breathing stopped. He collapsed against a dumpster, the syringe still dangling from his hand. Complete respiratory arrest within 30 seconds of injection. A restaurant worker taking out trash found him 2 minutes later. Blue lips, no breathing, no pulse. The worker called 911 and started chest compressions. Had taken a CPR class last year, counted out loud while pumping Marcus's chest. Paramedics arrived in 4 minutes. They administered Narcan. 1 dose, no response. 2 doses, still nothing. 3 doses of naloxone finally reversed the overdose. Marcus gasped, coughed. His lungs sucked in air like he'd been underwater for an hour. The paramedic said something about fentanyl, about how it was showing up everywhere, about how it was killing people faster than they could respond. Marcus was alive for 90 seconds, clinically dead. No heartbeat, no respiration, no brain activity. The Narcan had pulled him back from actual death, but it had also triggered immediate acute withdrawal. Every opioid receptor in his body suddenly emptied. His brain went into panic mode. The worst withdrawal he'd ever experienced hit in an instant. He tried to stand. The paramedics wanted to transport him to the hospital. Marcus refused treatment, signed a waiver with hands that shook uncontrollably, walked away while they were still calling after him. His body was in full withdrawal, cramping, sweating, nauseous. He needed heroin immediately or he'd be sick for hours. Marcus found Miguel 20 minutes later, bought 2 more balloons, same batch that had just killed him. The dealer asked if he was okay. Marcus's lips were still blue. His skin was grey. He looked like he'd been exhumed. Miguel shrugged and took the money. Not his problem if customers overdosed. Happened all the time now. Marcus injected half his usual dose. Self-preservation instinct hadn't completely vanished. The high was extraordinary. Stronger than anything he had experienced in months. His tolerance had been reset by the overdose and Narcan. The fentanyl worked on receptors that regular heroin couldn't touch. This was a better product. Nearly dying proved it. That's the perverse logic addiction creates. Marcus almost died, and his first thought was to seek out more of what killed him. The near-death experience didn't trigger caution. It confirmed quality. Strong enough to stop his heart meant strong enough to satisfy his tolerance. His survival instinct had been inverted so completely that danger became a selling point. Word spread through the user community. Miguel's stuff was fire. It could kill you. That meant it was good. Addicts flocked to him. Lines formed. Business tripled. The free market responding to product quality with deadly efficiency. Marcus overdosed again 3 weeks later. Different location, same result. Blue lips. Stopped breathing. Someone called 911. Paramedics arrived with Narcan. 2 doses this time. He came back gasping and furious because now he had to find more heroin to stop the withdrawal. Refused transport again. Left the scene against medical advice. The 3rd overdose happened in a public bathroom at McDonald's. Marcus had injected in a stall. Collapsed with the door locked. Someone heard him fall. Manager called emergency services. They had to break down the door. Found him unresponsive on the floor. 3 doses of Narcan, his third revival in 6 weeks. The paramedic recognized him from previous calls, asked if he had a death wish. Marcus didn't respond. Walked out of the McDonald's the moment he could stand. Portland was averaging 3 overdose deaths weekly by late 2015. The fentanyl had saturated the heroin supply. Users were dropping like soldiers in a war zone. The medical examiner's office was backed up with toxicology reports. Every case showed the same results. Fentanyl mixed with heroin, victims dead before they could call for help. Marcus knew 7 people who didn't answer their phones anymore. Danny found one of them in their tent. Pale, cold, clearly dead for hours. They called the authorities anonymously and moved camp. Nobody wanted police attention. The body was removed. The tent was left empty. Someone else moved in within days. The turnover rate in the camp was extraordinary. Death had become routine, expected, just part of the environment. The fear of overdose should have stopped Marcus, should have made him reconsider his choices, but the fear of withdrawal was stronger, much stronger. Being dopesick was a guaranteed nightmare. Overdosing was just a possibility. When withdrawal is certain and death is merely probable, addiction always picks the odds. Marcus started using the buddy system, never injecting alone, having someone nearby with Narcan. But that system failed constantly. Both people would use simultaneously. Both would nod off. Nobody stayed alert. The buddy system only worked if one person remained sober. That never happened. His 4th overdose occurred in October. He was with a girl named Cassie. They'd both injected. Marcus went under first. Cassie managed to hit him with Narcan before she passed out herself. She overdosed 30 seconds later. Someone walking by saw them both unconscious, called 911. Paramedics arrived to a scene of 2 people dying in an alley, revived both. Standard Tuesday evening in Portland. The number of overdoses Marcus survived stopped being remarkable. Paramedics nicknamed him the Cat because he kept coming back. 9 lives, apparently. They knew his face, knew his name, knew his history, kept detailed records. Each Narcan administration was documented. Each refusal of transport noted. The data accumulated like evidence at a crime scene. Marcus's brain suffered damage from repeated oxygen deprivation. Nothing catastrophic yet. But cognitive function was declining. Memory problems, difficulty concentrating, slower processing speed. Each overdose killed brain cells. Each revival brought him back slightly less capable than before. Death by 1,000 small subtractions. The street fentanyl kept getting stronger. Dealers were adding more to compensate for users developing tolerance. The margin between getting high and dying narrowed to almost nothing. What worked yesterday could kill you today. Batch consistency didn't exist. Every balloon was Russian roulette. Marcus overdosed a 5th time in November. This time he was alone. Woke up in an ambulance. Paramedics had found him unconscious under the bridge. Someone had called it in. 4 doses of Narcan to revive him. The paramedic said his lips had been purple. He'd been without oxygen for at least 5 minutes. Potential brain damage. Needed to go to the hospital for evaluation. Marcus pulled the IV out of his arm, jumped out of the moving ambulance at a red light, rolled on asphalt, got up running. The paramedics couldn't chase him. They had other calls, other overdoses, other people dying from the same poison. Marcus disappeared into Portland's downtown streets, still wearing the hospital blanket they'd wrapped him in. He bought heroin within 30 minutes. Same dealer, same product that had just nearly killed him. The withdrawal was starting, that familiar anxiety crawling up his spine. Marcus injected in a doorway, got high, forgot about the ambulance, forgot about the near-death experience, reset to baseline, ready to repeat the cycle tomorrow. The city's emergency response system was overwhelmed. Fire departments carried Narcan as standard equipment now. Police officers were trained to administer it. Even some librarians and social workers carried doses. The infrastructure adapted to the crisis. Normalized mass overdoses, treated them like weather patterns, inevitable, predictable, survivable with the right preparation. Portland wasn't unique. Seattle had similar problems. San Francisco, Los Angeles, the entire West Coast was experiencing synchronized catastrophe. Fentanyl had arrived. The death toll was climbing. Nobody could stop it because stopping required eliminating demand. That meant curing addiction. That meant fixing problems nobody understood how to solve. Marcus was 25 years old now. He'd survived 6 documented overdoses, probably more that went unrecorded. His brain had been without oxygen for cumulative minutes. His body had been clinically dead and revived repeatedly. He was living on borrowed time with interest accumulating. Every use brought him closer to an overdose that nobody would witness, that nobody would respond to in time. That would convert him from addict to statistic. But that knowledge didn't change his behavior. Couldn't change it. The addiction was stronger than survival instinct. The chemical dependency overrode every rational calculation. Marcus knew he was dying, knew the odds were eventually going to catch up, knew that every shot could be the last one, and he kept injecting anyway. Because not using meant withdrawal. Withdrawal meant suffering. Suffering was unacceptable. Death was just abstract. Pain was concrete. His brain chose temporary relief over permanent survival every single time. The heroin that kept nearly killing him was still circulating. Same dealer, same corner, same product. People were dying from it weekly. That didn't stop sales. That increased them. Users sought it out specifically, wanted the stuff strong enough to kill. That was the marketing. That was the draw. In the world of addiction, almost dying was a 5-star review. Marcus was both customer and advertisement. Walking proof that Miguel's product was worth the risk. The fact that he'd survived made others think they would too. The fact that he kept coming back made them think the high was worth it. Nobody considered the alternative. Nobody planned for the day when Narcan arrived 30 seconds too late. Everyone believed they'd be the exception. Marcus believed it too, right up until he wasn't. Marcus visited a needle exchange on MLK Boulevard in December 2015. The organization offered free clean syringes to reduce disease transmission among users. Public health policy accepted that addiction couldn't be cured immediately, but infections could be prevented. Harm reduction instead of abstinence. Keep people alive long enough to maybe want recovery. The exchange operated out of a converted storefront. 2 tables, boxes of fresh syringes, Sharps containers for used ones. A volunteer asked Marcus how many he needed. He took 50. The volunteer didn't judge, just handed over the supplies and mentioned they offered free testing for blood-borne diseases. HIV, hepatitis B and C, results in 2 weeks, plus a $10 Safeway gift card for participating. Marcus agreed because $10 bought half a balloon. Free money for letting them draw blood. The volunteer swabbed his arm, found a vein that wasn't completely destroyed, drew 2 vials of dark red blood, labelled them with a number instead of a name. Confidential testing. Nobody cared who you were, just what you were infected with. 3 weeks passed before they called. Marcus had forgotten about the test. His phone had been disconnected twice for non-payment. He was using a borrowed cell that barely held a charge. The volunteer asked him to come in for results, needed to discuss them in person. That meant bad news. Good results came over the phone. Bad results required counselling. He showed up on a January afternoon, dope-sick and irritable. The volunteer sat him down, explained gently that his hepatitis C test was positive. The virus was in his bloodstream, actively replicating, destroying his liver from the inside. Had he shared needles with anyone? Of course he had. Hundreds of times. Everyone shared. Fresh needles cost money. Used ones were free. The volunteer outlined the implications. Hepatitis C caused progressive liver damage. Cirrhosis typically developed within 10 to 20 years. Left untreated, the liver would fail completely. Death followed, but treatment existed. Newer medications could cure the virus. 12 weeks of pills. Cure rate above 95%. The cost was mentioned almost apologetically. $84,000 for the treatment course. Insurance usually covered it. Marcus had no insurance. Medicaid might approve it. Eventually, after appeals, after proving he'd stopped using, after demonstrating he'd actually take the pills as prescribed, the system didn't invest in active addicts. Too much risk, they'd just keep destroying the new liver too. Marcus received pamphlets about treatment programs, information about applying for assistance, phone numbers for liver specialists. He left with papers he'd never call, and knowledge that changed nothing. The virus was killing him. The heroin was killing him faster. One was abstract, one was immediate. He bought dope on the walk home. His body started showing symptoms by February. A yellow tint appeared in his eyes first. Jaundice. His liver couldn't process bilirubin anymore. The chemical accumulated in his blood, turned his skin progressively more yellow, like he was transforming into a Simpson character. Other users noticed. Some asked if he was okay. Most just kept their distance. The fatigue became overwhelming. Not the tiredness from lack of sleep. This was bone-deep exhaustion. His liver was supposed to metabolize toxins and produce energy. It was failing at both. Marcus could barely walk 2 blocks without needing to rest. Every movement required conscious effort. His body was running on auxiliary power. His urine turned dark brown, coffee-coloured. Another symptom of liver failure. The kidneys were trying to compensate, processing waste the liver couldn't handle. Marcus saw the change but ignored it. Just another malfunction in a system that had been breaking down for years. Add it to the list. Nausea plagued him constantly now. Not from withdrawal, not from heroin. This was different. His digestive system was compromised. Food made him sick, but not eating made him weak. He forced down protein bars occasionally, vomited half of them back up. His weight continued dropping, 128 pounds, then 122. His jeans hung off hip bones that protruded like handles. Blood appeared in his vomit one morning, bright red, fresh. The esophageal varices had started. Swollen veins in his throat caused by liver disease. They ruptured easily, bled heavily, could kill if they tore completely. Marcus wiped his mouth, injected heroin. The bleeding stopped eventually. Everything stopped eventually if you waited long enough. Word spread through the user community that Marcus had Hep C. People who'd shared needles with him started getting tested. 5 came back positive. They blamed him, called him contaminated, diseased, a walking biohazard. The same people who shared drugs and needles and pipes suddenly had standards. Marcus had crossed from unfortunate to untouchable. Danny refused to let him use his spoons anymore, told Marcus to get his own equipment, keep his infection to himself. Other users packed up when Marcus entered the tent, changed locations when he sat down nearby. The community that had accepted every other degradation drew the line at bloodborne pathogens. Addiction created strange moral boundaries. Stealing was understandable. Hepatitis was unforgivable. Marcus became isolated even among the isolated. The outcast rejected him. He used alone now, prepared his shots in different locations, avoided the main camps where former acquaintances might see him. His world compressed further. from apartment to tent to absolute solitude. Just him and the disease and the addiction eating him alive in parallel. His teeth started falling out in March. The first one came loose while he was eating a stolen sandwich. Just detached from his gum and landed on his tongue. He spit it out, examined the brown, rotting tooth in his palm. Years of neglect and malnutrition had weakened his entire mouth. Gum disease had set in. The teeth that remained were various shades of yellow and brown. His smile looked like a Halloween decoration. The liver damage accelerated. His abdomen began swelling with fluid. Cysts. His body was accumulating liquid it couldn't process. His stomach distended. He looked 6 months pregnant. The contrast between his stick-thin limbs and swollen belly made him appear grotesque. People stared openly now. No pretense of politeness. He was a spectacle, a warning. Marcus was 26 years old. His liver resembled that of a 60-year-old alcoholic who'd spent decades destroying it methodically. His had taken 3.5 years, efficiency through intravenous drug use, accelerated cirrhosis, fast-tracked organ failure. He'd accomplished in his 20s what usually took a lifetime. His parents came to Portland in April. They'd heard through relatives that he was dying, last chance to see their son before he became a memory. They searched the tent camps for 3 days, found him under the Morrison Bridge, barely recognized the skeleton draped in filthy clothes as their child. Marcus was unconscious when they arrived, nodded out from his morning shot. They stood over him, his mother crying, his father silent. This was their son. The boy they'd raised in San Francisco, sent to good schools, encouraged to pursue graphic design. He'd become this thing that barely resembled human. This creature existing at the intersection of multiple diseases. They took photos, just one. Documentation of complete destruction. Then they left. Didn't try to wake him. Didn't leave a message. Just walked away from what remained of Marcus Chen. He never knew they'd been there. Woke up 2 hours later in withdrawal. Found money for heroin. The daily cycle continued. His parents' visit was just another moment in a timeline that had stopped meaning anything beyond 8-hour increments. Past and future had both collapsed. Only the present existed. Only the next fix mattered. Only staying well had value. The hepatitis diagnosis had been 5 months ago. Marcus hadn't changed behaviour, hadn't sought treatment, hadn't stopped sharing needles despite knowing he was infectious. The information was just data. It didn't connect to action. His brain's ability to plan had deteriorated along with his liver. Everything was immediate. Everything was now. Long-term consequences meant nothing to someone who wouldn't live long-term. His skin took on a sickly yellow-green hue. The jaundice was advanced, unmistakable. He glowed slightly in certain light, radioactive, toxic, marked for death by his own body's surrender. Other users avoided eye contact when passing him. Superstition mixed with disgust. Like disease might spread through proximity. Like his condition might be contagious through casual contact. Marcus checked his reflection in a storefront window one evening. Barely recognized himself. The yellow skin, the hollow eyes, the missing teeth, the swollen belly, the skeletal frame. He looked like a corpse animated through dark magic. A zombie shuffling through Portland streets. Death wearing his face as a costume. The person in that reflection wasn't Marcus Chen. Wasn't the graphic designer from 3 years ago. Wasn't anyone's son. Just a collection of diseases pretending to be human. He prepared another shot in an alley. His hands shook from permanent nerve damage. The needle found a vein in his groin, only place left with any usable access. He pushed the plunger. The heroin entered his bloodstream, mixed with hepatitis, mixed with accumulated poisons, mixed with everything else destroying him. The high barely registered anymore, just a slight reduction in how terrible he felt. From completely awful to merely miserable. That was worth $84,000 in unpurchased medical treatment. That was worth his liver, worth his life, worth absolutely everything, because the alternative was withdrawal. And withdrawal remained the only thing scarier than death. Marcus got caught shoplifting on May 19th. Third time that month at the same Walgreens on Burnside. He'd been stealing razors, high-value items, easy to resell. Security had been watching him on cameras, waited until he passed the checkout, grabbed him at the door. His backpack contained 43 packages of razors worth $600 retail. The police ran his information. Outstanding warrant from a court date he'd missed 8 months ago. Failure to appear. The original charge was trespassing. Marcus had been sleeping in a parking garage. Now the misdemeanor had escalated. The judge had issued a bench warrant. No bail. Immediate custody until the court resolved both cases. They cuffed him in the back of the patrol car. Marcus was already 6 hours into withdrawal. Mild symptoms, sweating, restlessness. The panic was starting. That creeping dread of knowing what was coming. He asked the officers if he could make a call, find someone to bring medication. They ignored him. Everyone in custody claimed to need something. Pills, insulin, heart medication. The excuses blended together into white noise. Processing took 3 hours at Multnomah County Jail. Photos, fingerprints, property inventory. Medical screening. Marcus told the intake nurse he was heroin dependent, needed medication to prevent withdrawal. The nurse documented the admission, checked a box, moved on. Policy didn't allow opioid replacement therapy for incoming inmates. Heroin withdrawal wasn't medically dangerous like alcohol or benzos, just extremely uncomfortable. He'd have to endure it. By hour 12, uncomfortable became inadequate. Marcus's muscles started cramping violently. His legs felt like they were being twisted by invisible hands. The restless leg syndrome made sitting impossible. He paced his cell, back and forth, couldn't stop moving, couldn't sit still. His body demanded motion while simultaneously making motion agony. Hour 15 brought the diarrhea, explosive and constant. His intestines emptied everything they contained, then kept emptying. His body was purging itself, trying to expel the toxins it had been fed for years. The jail toilet became his permanent station. Other inmates complained about the smell. Guards didn't care. This was standard, happened daily with incoming addicts. Hour 18 escalated to vomiting. Marcus's stomach rejected water. Rejected nothing, just kept contracting, heaving. His abs cramped from the repeated spasms. He vomited bile, then blood-tinged liquid. His esophageal varices were probably bleeding again, adding liver failure to withdrawal symptoms. His body was staging multiple rebellions simultaneously. The bone pain started around hour 20, deep aching in every joint, like his skeleton was breaking from the inside. His femurs felt cracked. His spine felt compressed. Every bone in his body screamed. The pain wasn't localized. It was total, absolute. His entire structure hurt at a level that made him want to claw through his own skin to reach the source. Sleep became impossible. Marcus's brain wouldn't shut down, couldn't shut down. His nervous system was firing at maximum intensity. Every neuron was screaming for the chemical it needed. His mind raced. Anxiety peaked beyond anything he'd experienced. Panic attacks hit in waves. His heart rate spiked. He was dying. He was sure he was dying. The guards assured him he wasn't. This was normal. This was withdrawal. People survived it constantly. The skin sensitivity was unbearable. His jail uniform felt like sandpaper. The thin mattress felt like concrete. Every touch registered as pain. His nerves were so hypersensitive that air movement hurt. Existing inside his own body became torture. There was no position that didn't cause agony, no orientation that provided relief, just constant, unrelenting suffering. Hour 36 brought the cold sweats. Marcus was simultaneously freezing and burning up. His temperature regulation had failed. He'd shake with chills, then sweat through his clothes. The cycle repeated hourly. He'd soak his mattress, shiver violently, then burn like he had fever. His body couldn't decide if it was hypothermic or hyperpyrexic. It was both. It was neither. It was just broken. The yawning wouldn't stop. Uncontrollable jaw movements every few seconds. His jaw ached from constant opening. The yawning made his eyes water, made his face hurt, seemed pointless because he couldn't sleep anyway. His body performed the motions of exhaustion while denying him any rest. Cruel automation. Other inmates were withdrawing too. Marcus could hear them in nearby cells, the same sounds, same screams for help, same begging for medication that never arrived. The guards walked past without responding. They'd seen this 1,000 times. Nothing they could do. Policy was policy. Heroin withdrawal wasn't life-threatening, therefore no intervention, just documentation, just waiting. Day 3 was somehow worse than days 1 and 2. The acute symptoms should have been peaking, should have been starting to decline, but they intensified. Marcus's entire body was in revolt. His muscles twitched involuntarily. His legs kicked without his permission. His arms jerked randomly. His body had become a puppet controlled by malfunctioning strings. The mental anguish exceeded the physical. Marcus's brain chemistry was completely disrupted. Depression hit like a physical weight. Hopelessness consumed every thought. Life felt meaningless. Continuing felt impossible. The emotional pain was worse than the bone pain. He wanted to die, begged for death. Actual death seemed preferable to enduring another hour of this. Day 4 brought no improvement. Marcus hadn't slept in 96 hours. Complete insomnia. His brain wouldn't shut off. Couldn't shut off. He was trapped in consciousness, forced to experience every second of agony with complete awareness. No escape, no reprieve, just endless suffering in a 6x8 cell. The diarrhea continued. He'd lost 20 pounds of water weight, dehydrated severely. The medical staff gave him electrolyte drinks. He kept them down for maybe 10 minutes before vomiting them back up. His body rejected everything except misery. That it absorbed perfectly. Day 5 was when Marcus understood why people relapsed immediately after getting clean. This wasn't building character. This wasn't paying dues. This was torture. Systematic destruction of every physical and psychological defense mechanism. His body was teaching him a lesson. Use heroin or experience this. Those were the options. The drug had installed itself so deeply into his neurochemistry that removing it felt like removing vital organs. Other inmates stopped talking to him. Marcus was sobbing constantly, screaming intermittently, making sounds that didn't seem human. The guards moved him to a single cell. Solitary confinement for medical reasons. They didn't want him disturbing others. He was alone with his withdrawal. Just him and the symptoms and the endless hours. Day 6 brought the first signs of improvement. Microscopic, barely noticeable. But the diarrhea slowed. Still present but not constant. His vomiting decreased. He kept down water for an hour. Small victories measured in minutes between suffering. The acute phase was passing. The nightmare was downgrading to merely terrible. Day 7 allowed brief periods of rest, not sleep, not yet. But his eyes closed for a few minutes at a time. His body was so exhausted it had no choice but to surrender consciousness occasionally. The respite was temporary. He'd wake minutes later in full panic. But those minutes were progress. Day 8 brought actual sleep. 2 hours, interrupted and nightmare-filled, but real sleep. His brain finally shut down from sheer exhaustion. His body had survived the acute withdrawal. The worst was over. What remained was just months of feeling terrible. Post-acute withdrawal syndrome, mood issues, sleep problems, cravings, but nothing like the first week. That was hell. This was just purgatory. Day 15 arrived with Marcus able to eat solid food. His digestive system had recovered enough to process a sandwich. He kept it down, gained back 3 pounds. His body was remembering how to be human, how to function without constant heroin. The machinery was restarting, slowly, painfully, but restarting. Day 23 brought his court appearance. Marcus stood before the judge looking skeletal. His jail uniform hung off him like a tent. The judge reviewed both cases, the trespassing, the shoplifting. Marcus's public defender negotiated a plea, 90 days county time with credit for time served. He'd be out in 67 days total. The judge asked if Marcus had learned anything from his time in custody. Marcus said yes, meant no. He'd learned that withdrawal was survivable, that his body could endure. But he'd also learned that the heroin was worth any price to avoid ever experiencing that again. The lesson taken was opposite the lesson intended. 67 days clean. His first extended sobriety in 4 years. His mind cleared slightly. The fog lifted. He could think in complete thoughts again, could remember conversations, could process information beyond immediate survival needs. His body healed incrementally, gained weight, 20 pounds returned. His skin looked less grey, his eyes appeared less hollow, but the cravings never stopped. Not once. Every day brought thoughts of using, memories of the high, fantasies about that first shot when he got released. The obsession remained constant. The wiring in his brain hadn't changed, only his access to supply had been interrupted. The addiction was still there, dormant, waiting, planning his return. Marcus counted down the days, marked them off on a mental calendar. 54 days until release, 41 days, 29 days, 15 days. Each one brought him closer to freedom, closer to heroin, closer to the only relationship that had stayed consistent through everything. His brain anticipated, his body remembered, the muscle memory of addiction preparing for reactivation. Other inmates offered advice, go to meetings, find a sponsor, get into treatment, stay away from old people and places. Marcus agreed to everything, collected pamphlets, wrote down phone numbers, pretended to plan for recovery, but his actual plan was simple. Get released, find heroin, return to normal, this normal, the only normal he knew anymore. Day 67 arrived, release day. Marcus walked out of jail with a bus pass and $38 in gate money, his clothes from arrest day. His public defender had arranged for him to go to San Francisco. His parents had agreed to one final chance, a fresh start away from Portland's drug scene, away from dealers he knew, away from temptation. The bus ticket was already purchased, left in 4 hours. Marcus had 67 days clean, the longest sobriety since he'd started using. His tolerance was reset, his body was healing, his mind was clearer, everything was aligned for recovery. He had family support, had geographical distance, had time to think and plan. Every factor favoured success. Every advantage was in place, and none of it would matter. Because addiction doesn't respect advantages, doesn't care about clean time, doesn't negotiate with good intentions. It just waits, patient and permanent, ready to reclaim its territory the moment the opportunity presents itself. Marcus walked out of Multnomah County Jail on July 26th, wearing clothes that no longer fit. The jeans needed a belt cinched tight. His t-shirt hung loose where it used to stretch across his chest. 67 days of jail food had added 20 pounds, but he was still 30 pounds lighter than when this started. The bus ticket to San Francisco was in his pocket. Departure at 3 p.m., 4 hours away. His parents had arranged everything remotely, paid for the ticket, prepared his old bedroom, found a counsellor who specialised in addiction. The infrastructure for recovery was built. All Marcus needed to do was get on the bus. He told himself he'd walk around downtown first, just to see the city, stretch his legs after 2 months of confinement. The jail had released him at 11 a.m. Plenty of time to walk and still make the departure. No harm in saying goodbye to Portland. Just a brief tour of familiar streets. His feet carried him toward Old Town without conscious decision. Muscle memory navigating to places his brain knew intimately. The corners where dealers operated, the alleys where he'd used, the doorways where he'd slept. Geography of addiction mapped into his nervous system. Every landmark was a trigger. Every block held memories soaked in heroin. Marcus told himself he was just curious, wanted to see if anyone he knew was still around. Check on Danny, see if the tent camp still existed. Purely social. No ulterior motive. The lies came easily because he had had 67 days to practice them. His brain had spent every clean day planning this moment. He found Danny near the Burnside Bridge. Same spot, same tent. Looking worse than Marcus remembered. Gaunt, yellow-skinned, missing more teeth. The last 3 months had accelerated Danny's decline. He greeted Marcus with genuine happiness, thought he was dead or in prison. Seeing him alive qualified as good news. They talked about nothing important. Who'd overdosed, who'd gotten arrested, who'd disappeared. The camp census had changed completely. Faces Marcus knew were gone, replaced by new ones with the same desperate expressions. The turnover rate in this population was extraordinary. Death and incarceration created constant vacancies. Danny mentioned the heroin was incredible right now. Strongest batch in months. Everyone was getting properly high instead of just maintaining. Even experienced users were nodding hard. The market had improved during Marcus's absence. Supply and quality both up, prices stable, good time to be using. Danny laughed at his own dark humour. Marcus checked his phone. 12:47 p.m. 2 hours until the bus. Still plenty of time. He told Danny he was clean now, heading to San Francisco, starting over. Danny said that was great. Really proud of him. Genuinely meant it. Then asked if Marcus wanted one for the road. Just to celebrate making it through jail. Just to mark the occasion. One last time before getting clean forever. The offer hung in the air. Marcus's hands were already shaking. Not from withdrawal. His body was clean. The shaking was psychological, anticipatory. His brain knew what was coming before he consciously decided. 67 days of sobriety were about to collapse into a single choice that wasn't really a choice at all. Marcus said yes. Just one. Just to see what it felt like with a reset tolerance. Purely experimental, scientific curiosity. He'd still make the bus, still go to San Francisco. This was just a controlled goodbye. A final punctuation mark on his Portland chapter. His brain provided a dozen justifications simultaneously, all of them convincing, all of them lies. Danny sold him one balloon for $20, cheaper than Marcus remembered, Prices had dropped. Fentanyl made everything more affordable. Marcus held the balloon in his palm, stared at it for a long moment. This was the decision point, the fork in the road. Get on the bus or use the heroin. San Francisco or the tent. Family or addiction. Future or past. He chose past. Marcus and Danny went to a spot under the bridge. Privacy and shade. Danny had all the equipment. Spoon, lighter, fresh syringe. The ritual was familiar, comforting, like coming home after a long trip. Marcus cooked the shot. His hands remembered every motion. Drew up the brown liquid, found a vein in his forearm. The veins had healed during his clean time, plump and accessible, perfect for injection. He pushed the plunger. The heroin entered his bloodstream. His tolerance was gone. The dose that would have barely touched him 3 months ago hit like a freight train. The rush was extraordinary, better than he remembered, better than his first time. His brain released dopamine in quantities that made the past 67 days feel like punishment for a crime. This was reward. This was homecoming. This was everything. Marcus nodded out immediately, fell into a state between consciousness and unconsciousness. Time stopped functioning. Minutes became hours. Hours became minutes. He existed in a warm fog where nothing hurt and nothing mattered. The bus departure time came and went unnoticed. 3 p.m. passed, 4 p.m. passed. Marcus was somewhere beyond time, beyond obligation, beyond anything except the chemical embrace. He came to around 6 p.m., 3 hours gone, vanished into heroin-induced stasis. Danny was sleeping nearby. Marcus checked his phone. 7 missed calls from his mother, 3 voicemails, multiple texts asking where he was, if he'd made the bus, if he was okay. The bus had left without him. Marcus felt nothing about missing it. No regret, no guilt, just relief that the decision had been made. He didn't have to pretend anymore, didn't have to maintain the fiction of recovery. The heroin had decided for him. The addiction had voted. The result was predetermined. He texted his mother that he'd missed the bus, would catch tomorrow's, just had some things to handle first. She responded immediately, begging him not to use, pleading with him to come home. She'd buy another ticket, send money for a taxi to the station, whatever he needed. Just please get on a bus. Any bus. Please. Marcus turned off his phone. The battery was dying anyway. Danny woke up and asked if Marcus wanted to go in on another balloon. Split the cost. Marcus had $18 left from his gate money. That plus Danny's contribution bought 1 balloon. They'd split it 50-50. Economics of shared addiction. Collective poverty pooling resources for mutual destruction. Day 2 of freedom found Marcus still under the bridge. He'd told himself he'd catch today's bus to San Francisco, the 3 p.m. departure. But first he needed to get well. The morning sickness had started. His tolerance was building back rapidly. The clean time had been erased overnight. His brain snapped back into addiction mode like it had never left. Muscle memory, neural pathways reactivating instantly. Marcus stole a laptop from a coffee shop, walked out with someone's bag while they used the bathroom, pawned it for $60, used the money for heroin. The bus ticket remained in his pocket, unused. A bookmark for good intentions. He'd catch tomorrow's bus, or next week's, or never. The timeline kept extending. The departure kept postponing. The addiction kept winning. 3 days after release, Marcus had completely reintegrated into the tent camp. His spot was exactly where he'd left it. Someone else had been using it but moved when Marcus returned. Seniority mattered even among the homeless. He unpacked his few possessions, laid out his sleeping bag, organised his spoons and syringes, made himself comfortable in absolute squalor. This was home. This was where he belonged. His tolerance was climbing fast. The dose that had floored him on day 1 barely touched him on day 3. His brain remembered its previous tolerance, was rebuilding toward it rapidly. The neurochemistry snapped back like a rubber band. All that jail time had accomplished nothing permanent, just a temporary interruption, a pause button on inevitable progression. Marcus's phone stayed off. Too many missed calls, too many voicemails from his mother that he couldn't bear to hear. Her hope was painful to witness. Her belief in him felt like accusation, easier to disappear. Let her think whatever she wanted. He was gone. The person she knew didn't exist anymore. Just this shell, just this junkie, just this creature that prioritized heroin above everything, including his own survival. The 72-hour mark arrived. 3 days out of jail. Marcus had used continuously. His arms showed fresh track marks, purple bruises at injection sites. The veins were already taking damage again. His body fell back into deterioration like it was programmed. Like this was default state. Clean was aberration. Addiction was homeostasis. His court-ordered counselling appointment was scheduled for the following Monday. He was supposed to check in, provide proof of treatment, show progress toward recovery. Marcus had no intention of attending. Violation of release terms meant back to jail. He didn't care. Future consequences meant nothing. Only the present mattered. Only the next shot had reality. Week 1 of freedom ended with Marcus in the exact same situation he'd been in before arrest. Same tent, same people, same routine. Nothing had changed except he'd lost 67 days to forced sobriety. The jail time hadn't rehabilitated him, hadn't scared him straight, hadn't provided any lasting transformation. Just delayed the inevitable return, just postponed the outcome everyone could predict. His mother stopped calling after day 5. The phone stayed off anyway. She'd given up. Again. This was probably the final time, the actual last chance. She'd said it before, but this felt different. Marcus had walked out of jail with every advantage: support, housing, treatment, transportation away from triggers, and he'd chosen heroin within hours. Some people couldn't be saved. Some addictions were too complete. She'd accepted that her son was one of them. Marcus was 26 years old. He'd survived jail withdrawal, gotten clean for the first time in years, had a clear path to recovery, and thrown it away for a feeling that lasted 4 hours. The relapse proved what he'd suspected. He couldn't stop. Not wouldn't. Couldn't. The addiction had reorganized his brain so thoroughly that choosing sobriety was no longer within his capability. The wiring was permanent, the damage irreversible. He was an addict, would be an addict, would die an addict. The only variable was timing. His tolerance continued building. 2 weeks after release, he was using 5 times daily again. The clean time had been a cruel reset, made him start over at building tolerance from scratch, cost more money to get high, required more frequent injections, but he'd rebuilt quickly. His brain remembered, his body adapted. He was back to baseline, back to needing 0.3 grams per shot, back to spending money he didn't have on drugs that barely worked. The tent under the bridge was his permanent address now. No pretense of apartment hunting, no discussion of employment, no mention of recovery, just acceptance. This was his life. This was his level. This was where the story ended, under a bridge, in a tent, surrounded by people in identical situations, all of them using, all of them dying slowly, all of them knowing exactly how this ended but unable to change course. The bus ticket to San Francisco remained in his pocket, a memento of the life he could have had, the person he could have become, The future he'd traded for heroin and absolutely no regrets, because regret required the capacity to imagine alternative choices, and Marcus had lost that capability entirely. January 2017 arrived with Portland under a rare snowfall. The tent camp under the Burnside Bridge was colder than usual. Marcus had been using heroin for 5 years. He was 28 years old. His body reflected every one of those 1,800 days. His veins were completely destroyed, arms useless, hands collapsed, feet unusable. Neck veins had failed months ago. Marcus was injecting into his femoral vein now. The groin. Last accessible site. Most dangerous location. Missed the vein and the heroin went into muscle. Caused abscesses, infections, potential blood clots that could kill instantly. An infection was already developing, red and hot around the injection site. Marcus could feel it spreading. Lymph nodes in his groin were swollen. The area throbbed constantly. He needed antibiotics, needed medical attention, needed to stop injecting there. But alternatives didn't exist. This was the only vein left. Stop using this site meant stop using entirely. That option wasn't available. His mother had sent one final message through a former friend who still had Marcus's number. Come home or never contact us again. Final ultimatum. Last offer. The deadline had passed weeks ago. Marcus never responded. The door was closed. His family had performed their own funeral, mourned the son who was already gone, moved forward without him. Marcus's welfare check arrived on January 15th. $637. Disability payment for his hepatitis diagnosis. Government money meant for treatment, for food, for housing. He spent it on heroin within 48 hours, bought enough to stay high for 3 days straight. No planning beyond that window, no saving. No rationing, just consumption until depletion. A new batch hit the streets that week. Word spread fast. The stuff was exceptionally strong. Multiple people had overdosed already. 2 died. 3 were revived. The batch was hot, inconsistently cut. Some balloons contained mostly heroin. Others were nearly pure fentanyl. Russian roulette with every purchase. Users sought it out anyway. The danger proved quality. Deaths were marketing. The first night of the new batch, 2 people in Marcus's tent overdosed back to back. Both were revived with Narcan. Both used again within hours. The close calls didn't deter anyone, just confirm the product worked. If it could kill experienced users, it would definitely get you high. The logic was airtight in the universe of addiction. Marcus bought from the same dealer the next day, used his remaining money, $70 for 3 balloons, enough for today and maybe tomorrow morning. He returned to the tent. Danny was there. A girl named Cassie had joined them, new to the camp, maybe 25, still had most of her teeth. Probably only a year or 2 into this lifestyle, still relatively fresh. The tent was cramped with 3 people. Cold air leaked through tears in the fabric. Marcus prepared his shot using a camping stove for heat. The black tar dissolved into brown liquid. He drew it through cotton into a syringe. The needle was dull from reuse. He'd been using it for 9 days. The tip was bent slightly, but it still punctured skin, still found veins, still delivered. Marcus positioned himself for a groin injection, found the femoral vein through touch. Years of practice. He couldn't see it, but he could feel it, pulsing under his fingertips. He inserted the needle at an angle, drew back the plunger, blood mixed with heroin, dark red confirmation. He'd registered properly. The shot was good. He pushed the plunger slowly. The heroin entered his bloodstream, travelled directly to his heart, pumped to his brain in seconds. The dose was stronger than he'd calculated. The fentanyl concentration was higher than previous balloons. Inconsistent cutting, random distribution. His luck had run out. 20 seconds after injection, Marcus's eyes rolled back. His body went rigid, then completely limp. He collapsed sideways. The syringe fell from his hand. His breathing became shallow, then stopped entirely. His lips began turning blue, cyanosis spreading across his face, oxygen deprivation killing brain cells by the thousands. Danny saw it happening, yelled Marcus's name. No response, shook his shoulder, nothing. Marcus was gone, completely unresponsive. Danny had seen this before, knew exactly what it meant. Overdose, fatal if not reversed immediately. He needed Narcan. Right now, their emergency kit was empty. They'd used the last dose 3 days ago. Forgot to get more. Danny screamed for someone to bring Narcan. His voice echoed under the bridge. Other tents ignored him. Everyone was high. Nobody wanted to get involved. Helping meant attention. Attention meant police. Police meant problems. Easier to pretend you heard nothing. Cassie was too new to understand the urgency. Watched Danny panic without comprehending. Marcus looked like he was sleeping. People nodded off constantly. This seemed normal. She didn't realize she was watching someone die in real time. Didn't understand that every second without oxygen was permanent damage, irreversible destruction. Danny ran to nearby tents, begging for Narcan. Everyone was out. The last batch had caused so many overdoses that supplies were depleted. The needle exchange was closed. It was 11 p.m. Nobody had naloxone. Nobody could help. Danny was watching his friend die and couldn't stop it. He ran to the street, flagged down a passing car. The driver saw his appearance, dirty clothes, wild eyes, obvious junkie, locked the doors and drove away. Danny tried another car, same result. Nobody stopped, nobody helped. He was invisible. The homeless were ghosts. Their emergencies didn't register as real. 5 minutes had passed. Marcus had been without oxygen for 5 minutes. His brain was dying. Neurons were firing their last signals. Memories were being erased. Functions were shutting down. The person named Marcus Chen was being deleted cell by cell. What remained would be something else, something less, something broken beyond repair. Danny finally found someone with a phone, made them call 911, gave the location, begged them to hurry. The dispatcher said paramedics were en route, estimated arrival 7 minutes. Danny ran back to the tent. Marcus was grey, his lips were purple, his chest wasn't moving. 7 minutes might as well be 7 hours. It was already too late. The paramedics arrived 12 minutes after Danny's initial call, 17 minutes after Marcus had stopped breathing. They found him in the tent, checked for a pulse, found one but it was weak, thready, barely present. His heart was still pumping but his brain had been without oxygen for far too long. The damage was catastrophic. They administered Narcan, 2 doses, no response, 3 doses. His chest suddenly heaved, air rushed into his lungs, his heart rate stabilized. The naloxone had reversed the opioid blockade, his autonomic functions restarted, but consciousness didn't return. Marcus remained completely unresponsive, eyes open but unseeing, body alive but nobody home. The lead paramedic checked his pupils. Both were fixed and dilated. Didn't respond to light. Bad sign. Brain damage. Significant. They loaded Marcus onto a gurney, started an IV, monitored his vitals, transported to OHSU hospital, the same hospital that had treated his abscess, that had warned him he'd die if he kept using. The warning had been accurate, just delayed. Emergency room doctors assessed the damage. Marcus was in a coma. Neurological responses were minimal. Brain scans showed extensive hypoxic injury, 17 minutes without oxygen. 16 of those at normal body temperature. The brain could survive 4 to 6 minutes without permanent damage. After that, cells died, functions disappeared, the person dissolved. What remained was biological machinery operating without consciousness. His parents were contacted through emergency information in the system, still listed as next of kin despite years of no contact. They flew to Portland immediately, arrived at the hospital on day 2, saw their son connected to machines, breathing through a ventilator, being kept alive through medical intervention. The doctors explained the prognosis: extensive brain damage, unlikely to wake. If he woke, he wouldn't be the person they knew. Severe cognitive deficits, possible vegetative state, quality of life near zero. 5 days passed. Marcus remained comatose. No improvement. No signs of consciousness. His brain activity was minimal. The EEG showed patterns consistent with severe injury. Doctors recommended withdrawing life support. Continuing was prolonging the inevitable. His parents asked for one more day, then another, then accepted the medical advice. They authorized the removal of mechanical ventilation on January 19th, 2017. The machines were turned off. Marcus's breathing stopped within minutes. His heart continued for a while, pumping blood through a brain that no longer processed thought or feeling or memory. The person was gone. The body was following. Marcus Chen died at 3:47 p.m., surrounded by machines that beeped until they were silenced. His parents were present, had been absent for 3 years but were present for the end. His mother held his hand. His father stood silently. They watched their son become a corpse, the transformation from person to body. The medical staff pronounced death, documented the time, covered him with a sheet. The medical examiner listed cause of death as fentanyl toxicity, one of 236 opioid overdose deaths in Oregon that year. A statistic. A data point, a number in a report about the crisis. His death changed nothing, solved nothing, meant nothing beyond the immediate family who'd already mourned him years ago. His body was cremated. His parents took the ashes back to San Francisco. They didn't hold a service, didn't announce his death publicly, didn't want sympathy from people who'd ask what happened. Explaining was too painful. The stigma was too heavy. Easier to say nothing. Let Marcus disappear quietly. Let his absence become the story instead of his death. Danny didn't learn Marcus had died until 3 weeks later. Someone mentioned seeing paramedics, mentioned the overdose. Nobody knew the outcome. Danny assumed Marcus survived. Everyone survived if the Narcan came. He'd seen people revive dozens of times. Marcus was probably in the hospital, or jail, or he'd moved camps. The options were endless. Death seemed unlikely. The truth filtered through slowly. Someone heard from someone who heard from a hospital social worker. Marcus hadn't made it. Brain damage, life support, withdrawal, death. The information travelled through the community like disease, spread from tent to tent. Users absorbed the news and kept using, because what else would they do? Stop. That would require capabilities they'd lost years ago. The heroin that killed Marcus was still being sold. Same corner, same dealer, same batch. Other people were buying it, using it. Some were overdosing, most were being revived. The cycle continued. Supply and demand remained unchanged. One death didn't impact the market, didn't affect pricing, didn't alter distribution. The system was bigger than any individual casualty. Someone else was sleeping in Marcus's spot now. A younger user, maybe 23, new to the street, starting his own journey down the same path, using the same tent, buying from the same dealers, making the same choices, heading toward the same inevitable conclusion. The location was recycled, the tragedy was repackaged. The outcome was predetermined. Marcus Chen had been a graphic designer, had parents who loved him, had a girlfriend, had talent and future and possibility. Then he broke his wrist, got prescribed pills, ran out, found heroin, started using, kept using, couldn't stop using, destroyed everything, died alone in a tent, 28 years old, 5 years from first use to death. The timeline was shockingly compressed, but also shockingly common. His story wasn't unique. It was replicated thousands of times. Different names, same arc, same ending. The American opioid crisis in concentrated form. One person, one addiction, one completely preventable death that nobody prevented because the systems designed to help came too late or not at all, or with conditions that addicts couldn't meet. And the result was this: a tent under a bridge, a needle in a groin, 17 minutes without oxygen, a family in San Francisco holding an urn, and heroin still being sold on the same corner where it would kill the next person, and the next person, and the next person, until something changed, and nothing was changing.